I remember when this girl ended up taking me to the part of her house where no one was allowed into. I ended up going in there and realizing that there were cages, there were chains everywhere, and basically that was the moment I realized this girl had a whole dungeon. Yo, what is going on, you guys? My name's Bubba, and welcome back to a super insane but crazy story. Now, today's story all takes place back when I was in high school, and this was my grade 11 year. Now, in grade 11, one thing I was really known for was doing the Devil's Tango. And for sure, one thing I can say is that there was one time when I was walking down my school hallway, and I ended up meeting up with this girl that I actually recognized from my science class. Now, this girl was perfectly normal. There was nothing weird about her whatsoever. But one thing I can say is that her friend that would always get in the way between me and her was definitely a weirdo. To the point where I remember that time when I bumped into her in the hallway, I ended up saying, "Oh, hey, you heading to class?" "Oh, yeah, I'm heading to science class." And her friend would just barge into the conversation saying, "Oh, hey, Bubba, what are you doing here?" Nothing, just going to class, that's all." "Okay, cool, well, we'll see you there. Come on, girly, let's get out of here." And she would always basically take her away from talking to me. I remember I found this super annoying, and I never understood why this girl did not like me so much talking to her friend. Like, don't get me wrong, I have a ton of red flags about myself, but the way she was always interrupting really just got annoying. So I remember that same day during lunch, I ended up seeing her sitting alone in the cafeteria, and I decided to walk up to her friend and say, "Hey, yo, I got a question. Do we have a problem here?" What do you mean, Bubba? What are you yapping about?" "I mean, like, do we have an issue? Because, like, every time I talk to your friend, you always end up getting in the way as if I did something wrong." "Well, yeah, Bubba, like, haven't you realized how many girls you've done in this school already?" "Yeah, but, like, doesn't mean that I'm always gonna be this way." "Bubba, honestly, I just don't even think you can handle her. Like, if you can't handle me, what makes you think you can handle her? Like, honestly." I remember that moment, I ended up looking at her in confusion. And that's when I said, "Wait, you think I can't handle you? Like, seriously? Is that what we're going with here?" And at that moment, I remember she ends up standing up from the cafeteria table and says, "You know what, Bubba? If you think you can handle me, come over. We'll see if you can really handle a real woman." At that moment, I kind of started giggling inside because, let's be real here, we were both in high school. But at the same time, I ended up giving her the benefit of the doubt, and I said, "Okay, well, I mean, sure, give me your address." I remember she ended up grabbing my phone, and she ended up putting down her address for me to basically go to. And at that moment, well, things got a little insane. Because I remember throughout the rest of the school day, she would always end up texting me these weird questions. Like, for example, "Bubba, you're okay with handcuffs, right? Bubba, do you get rope burn easily? Bubba, are you sure you want to come over still?" And honestly, like, every time she would ask me a question, it just got severely annoying. But I remember right as after school came around, I ended up walking to my vehicle, and that's when her friend that I originally liked and wanted to talk to ends up walking up to me. She walks up to me and says, "Hey, Bubba, I'm just wondering, are you going to see my friend today?" Why? What'd she tell you?" "Oh, nothing much, to be honest, other than you're going over to her place. And honestly, before anything, I just want to say you should be careful." "What? Why should I be careful?" "Bubba, you don't know the type of person she is, and trust me when I say this, it's gonna get really toxic." I remember when I looked at her, I was really just lost in what she was saying, and then that's when she walked away from me. Now, at that point, when I sat in my car and started driving home, I started to really worry. Because, like, what if this girl was, like, psycho? Or what if she was crazy? Or what if she was going to, you know, end my life? Like, who knows what this girl could have done? But I decided to say YOLO, which, by the way, back at the time, YOLO was actually still being said, and said, I'll go there and see what happens. A couple hours later, when I was still at home getting ready, I remember I ended up finally getting dressed, and I texted her saying, "Hey, I'm gonna start heading over. Is that cool?" Yeah, start heading over. It's totally fine." And that's exactly what I did. I got inside my car, I drove over to her place, and when I got to her place, I'm not gonna lie, she seemed to live in like a totally normal household. Like, it was a really nice modern house, and you can tell her family definitely came from money. So I remember when I finally parked my car in the driveway and I walked to her front door, she automatically opened it without me knocking, and she says, "Hey, Bubba, come on in." I remember I went inside and I sat down in her living room, and we started watching like a movie together on this like giant like flat screen TV that she had. And that's when I looked at her and said, "So is this like part of the test, just watching a scary movie? Like, really?" "Well, no, obviously, dummy. There's a lot more than you think." "Okay, well, like, I don't know, are we gonna do the Devil's Tango?" Yeah, sure, but before that, let me just take you to the bathroom real quick." "Wait, what?" I remember I ended up going to the bathroom with her, and me and her, we ended up like basically started washing up. No, we did not take a shower. We basically like ended up like washing our hands and stuff. I don't know why she wanted to. Apparently it's like some sort of procedure that she wanted. And finally, when we ended up finishing up with the bathroom, we ended up walking down this really deep hallway that ended up taking us to a room that was locked. Now, when I say locked, I don't mean like a normal like locked door. Like, I mean this room actually had like a full-on locking key that you cannot break with the average bolt cutters. I remember I ended up saying, "Wait, why is there like a giant lock on this door?" "Well, duh, my parents don't want anyone come in, but honestly, I want to see if you can handle it. And right as we walk in there, no joke, I ended up seeing there was a cage. I ended up seeing there were chains like everywhere. And not only that, there was also like a swing with like weird leather around it. Like, no joke, when I was looking around this room, I realized this girl had a full-on dungeon in her house. At that moment, I started to panic. I'm like, wait, what are we doing here exactly? And that's when this girl ends up kissing me and says, we're gonna do the devil's tango. At that moment, I started to panic. I'm not gonna lie, there's a lot of things I can handle in this life, but a girl with a full-on dungeon, like, yeah, no. So right as this girl starts kissing me, I remember she ends up actually pushing me towards the wall, and she ends up locking my leg to one of the chains that were like attached to the wall. And right as she does that, I freak out and say, wait, what are you doing? No, I don't want to be locked up. Why not, Bubba? What's wrong with you being locked up? Can you not handle it? Well, no, I mean, I'm fine, but like, you shouldn't do this. Like, isn't this not legal? Bubba, do you even know the safe word? There's a safe word. And at that moment, she ends up going behind me and full on handcuffing me. And she says into my ear, well, I guess you're gonna have to find out eventually. And that's when she just full on, no joke, kicks me in the eggplant. Yeah, I know. You guys are probably thinking this girl was like gonna do some freaky stuff. No, she literally kicks me in the eggplant and says, that's for all the girls you've done, by the way, without getting my permission. Your permission? You're not my mom. At this moment, I started to freak out because this girl was not only hurting me, but she also had me locked up inside her dungeon. I remember I kept basically begging her to just let me out and like how this is not cool. Like, you should not be doing this. It's not legal. And then this girl, she just kept yapping over and over and over again as if like I cared what she had to think about me. But this is where everything gets a lot more worse because I remember after that whole situation, she ends up leaving the room, and this was my only time to get a breather after all the yapping she had done to my ear. But literally not even 5 seconds later, she ends up coming back into the room and she brought a candle. She brought a candle and then she pushed me onto the ground and she put the candle like over my head, and wax that was burning hot started to fall on top of me. Now there's a lot more that happened, but I'm not gonna say because of monetization reasons, but for sure it was a lot of the devil's tango, but in the more painful kind. I gotta say, this girl, for having a dungeon, she was a major freak. But I remember even when after everything was over, she left me locked up in there and she wouldn't let me leave. I remember I ended up being handcuffed, chained to the wall, not knowing what in the world am I supposed to do. But luckily somehow we ended up hearing the doorbell ring and I thought it was her parents. So I started yelling and screaming as much as I could before she put duct tape over my mouth. And that's when she ended up going to answer the door, and when she answered it, I recognized the voice of who was at the door. It was the girl that I originally wanted to talk to before I got into this whole disaster. I ended up trying to yell as much as I could, and that's when I heard the girl that was her friend that I originally liked say, I know where he's in here. Can you please just let me go see him? Fine, whatever, girly. He's in my dungeon. At that moment, she ends up walking into the dungeon and seeing me chained up with basically almost nothing on. She ends up running up to me and unbuckling me and everything and undoing all my locks that I was locked into. And she ends up apologizing over and over again. And luckily, she ended up saying, if you want, like, just to make up for it, you want to like maybe go out sometime? At that moment, I ended up seeing her friend right behind her, and I'm not gonna lie, I just said, nah, you guys are both crazy. And I got outside, I got inside my car, and I drove away. Since then, I never spoke to her, but honestly, after that experience, I don't think I ever want to. Now, if you guys have never met someone with a dungeon, then follow for more embarrassing stories just like this one. Peace out, guys.